if you believe the polling we've seen recently, it would appear the November election will be a landslide for Joe Biden. A recent Economist poll says Joe Biden has an 89% chance of winning in November. The president only a 10% chance. In their model, it shows if the election were held today, Biden would win 344 electoral votes to just 194 for President Trump. And obviously it takes 270 electoral votes to win the Electoral College. But if you recall, in 2016, just about all the polls dismissed President Trump's chances of winning, and we know how that one turned out. So how serious should we be taking these polls? Joining us is Trump campaign's pollster, Jim Mclaughlin. Jim, welcome back to the show. Great to be here. Always good to see you. You know, when I look at this Economist poll, it seems pretty extreme. 89% chance for Biden, only 10% for President Trump. What do you make of this? This seems a bit extreme.
Yeah, in the words of Yogi Berra, it's deja vu all over again. If we remember 4 years ago, literally right before the election day, you had the New York Times model was saying there was a 92% chance of Hillary Clinton was going to win re-election. So, you know, right now we're seeing this race very close, very competitive, especially in the battleground states right now. And look, President Trump, we feel really good on the issues. And the interesting part is when we look at polls, we don't look at them and say, here's where the horse race is, here's where the battleground is. When we see on issues from the economy to taxes to law and order, President Trump has significant advantages over Joe Biden right now on the issues that matter most to the voters.
Yeah, Jim, let me ask you about the polls in battleground states. And I know you just said we're not going to get, you look at the bigger issues. But when it does come to those polls in the battleground states, we hear so many different states out there. Are there at least a couple that you say, look, either these are must-haves or, and I know there's a lot of different ways to slice up the electoral pie, but at least at the top of your list, what states keep you up at night at least? Can you give us, can you give us a sense of that at least?
David, that's a great question. And the truth of the matter is there's 17 battleground states that we're looking at right now. And of course, you know, you look at, remember last time you had the famous blue wall? You had Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, that a Republican candidate hadn't won in decades. And President Trump blew down that blue wall last time. And he won all three of those states. Now, we only need to win one of those states right now. And the president's looking good in Wisconsin. He's looking good in Pennsylvania. And I think we can still win in a state like Michigan. And the truth of the matter is the president's on offense right now. We're looking at states that he didn't win last time. States like Virginia, states like Nevada, states like New Hampshire, states like Colorado, a state like New Mexico. We really believe not only does he have the ability to win the 304 electoral votes that he did last time, but he has the ability to move beyond that. Because think about it. Look at a state like New Hampshire, where the president is going to visit now. You look at a state like New Hampshire, the first thing Joe Biden promised the voters that he's going to do when he gets elected, he's going to raise taxes. And New Hampshire is a very, very anti-tax state. Push comes to shove. And you compare Joe Biden's record versus that of President Trump, in states like New Hampshire, the president's going to do great.
Jim, take us through being a smart consumer of polling data that's out there. There's so many different polls. Look, I know you can poll all voters, you can poll registered voters, you can poll likely voters, and we really haven't seen many polls with likely voters yet. So help us understand, help someone out there understand what they need to look for in some of this polling.
Again, that's a great question, David, because you're exactly right. A lot of these polls aren't. They're polls of adults. They're polls of registered voters. We see consistently this president always does better with likely voters. And what is the big reason for that? The big reason for that is he has a very energized base. One of the things you hear, not just from Republicans, but you hear from Democratic consultants all the time, that Joe Biden does not have an energized base. He does not ensue a lot of enthusiasm among young people, among African Americans, among Hispanic voters that, you know, that Barack Obama did very well, especially in his reelection. So that's a big problem that you have with a lot of these polls. When they're not doing likely voters, when the president has that intensity advantage, it hurts the president in some of these national polls.
Jim, I want to show you a recent Gallup poll. It's kind of interesting. It shows the president's approval rating between Republicans and Democrats. And Gallup says it's the largest divide they've ever seen. 91% approval rating for Republicans, only 2% from Democrats. Obviously, as you know, normally that Democrats normally around 5 or 6. But the interesting thing is I think the president's approval rating overall was 38%. Just a few months ago, it was 49%, which is one of his highest so far. When you go back and you look at someone like Jimmy Carter or George H.W. Bush, in their re-election years in June, they were just under 40%, and obviously we know what happened there. Are you concerned about those numbers? Do you look at these numbers at all?
The important thing to get out of that, you see how that Republican base is behind the president. And you know what? That's what elections are for. Right now, we have a very polarized electorate. And once we really believe that we go out there and we start talking about the issues, we start talking about Joe Biden's promise to raise taxes, we start talking about how Joe Biden's going to he wants national government-run health care, how he wants to defund the police, how he wants open borders, how he's literally adopted the agenda. Think about it. He's adopted the radical socialist agenda of the squad on a lot of issues here. And not only are we going to have an energized Republican base, but we're also going to make inroads, not just with independents, but also with Democratic voters, just like he did 4 years ago.
Jim McLaughlin, always a pleasure to see you. And by the way, we caught the subliminal hat behind you. We saw the hat. We know. We see it. Don't you worry.
Oh, it's a great hat.
Thanks, Jim. Yeah, I'm sure the president would agree with you. Appreciate it.
And the pleasure is all mine. Thank you.
All right. Coming next, President Trump says students should return to classrooms when school starts up again. But with COVID-19 cases spiking across the country, is that a good idea? Well, our company joins us to grade President Trump's plan next.